Welcome, everyone. My name's David Bauders. I'm the CEO of Hounds, and I'm joined today by Wes Smith, who is President and CEO of NAED, the National Association of Electrical Distributors. Welcome, Wes.
Thank you.
Nice to be with you.
It's good to be with you.
So we're here at the NEMA National Meeting, and one of the major topics is just how much change is going on in the industry. And we know with the ongoing green shift and all of the Internet of Things and EVs and data centers and artificial intelligence and all of these huge shifts in technology in our society, that there's a vast amount of change really going on in the industry right now. One of the things that we're also aware of, particularly at Hounds, is the shift in demographics in the industry. So over the next 5 to 10 years, broadly, we see about half of the customers of the industry changing. A lot of these are electricians whose knees and backs give out after decades of doing demanding physical work. Can you talk a little bit about what that is doing for distributors today and how they're having to deal with that?
Sure. I spent 37 years with a distributor, so I've seen it through the lens of being part of a team leading a distributor and as part of NAED. And it's at the core of one of our pillars around workforce development. And of course, you can look at workforce development in a couple of different ways. One's the skills someone needs to be an effective labor, whatever labor you're doing. Here we're talking about electricians. Or you can also include workforce development in terms of recruiting and retaining people. And I think the changing demographics, to sort of weave things together, I'm a boomer. I'm on the tail end of the boomer generation. There's 10,000 of me a day retiring, have been last 10 years, and will through 2027. The generation following us is replacing 7,000. And that incongruence alone is driving a lot of the labor shortage we talk about. We would like to wrap it in this, can't find people because people don't want to work. Well, no, that's really not the issue. The issue is a math problem. And it's demographically driven. We just didn't have enough babies to replace the ones that are aging out. And that's the reality. So how do you solve for that equation? Well, efficiency. We're all working on things that will help us work more efficiently. And that's been our economic driver for how many decades now is productivity.
Yeah, one of the things that's interesting with our Hounds population, about 70% of them are under the age of 35, 20% of them speak Spanish as their first language. And we're seeing really the impact of immigration in trying to backfill some of that shortage. What do you see in terms of how distributors are connecting with this new generation?
Well, there's a couple of different ways, I think, kind of pulling in the tail end of the last conversation, how we present our industry. In a world where you're competing for talent, there's less talent. You have to craft a message that is appealing to those that you're. So are weaving in the use of technology and how we're using technology not to displace people, but to help people work smarter, to work more efficiently. And they get to interact with the tools that they're more native with than those that are outgoing. So that's one element. Another element is, we've got facts are facts, and they're unbiased and they're unemotional. And the facts are this has been traditionally a white male-dominated industry.
That's right.
And the facts are in the future, we have to compete with a different demographic. So we've got to learn what's important to them. What do they want to accomplish? What are their personal and business goals? And how do we appeal to that? And how do we appeal to their sense of culture that they grew up in, whether it's language, whether it's family, whether it's religion, whatever cultural things affect you, we have to learn what's important to them so that we're not only a place technically I want to work, and I can use tools that I'm more native with, but I can do so in an area where I feel comfortable. You know, that's different for us.
Yeah, I think one of the things that makes this generation so different is that they're digital natives. So this is a generation that grew up with smartphones, that grew up on screens all the time. And one of the things that's striking as we talk to our users at Trade Hounds is, they really are looking for new ways to do business with their suppliers. These are people, I joke, that don't want to call their parents, let alone call customer service at their distributor. And we're seeing really a very strong shift in preferences among these buyers in terms of how they connect with brands, in terms of how they find information about products, in terms of how they source material to do the work. What do you think this will mean for distributors in terms of how they shift their business model? Well,
I don't think it's a, no pun intended, light switch where that change just happens. I think it's a progression of change. I have two of those digital natives that are 30-somethings. You can't have them and love them and not study their behaviors. So I see their behaviors, and you're absolutely right. Their preference would be to interact with a device, but not really at the expense of having relationships with people.
Sure.
So I see a mix of the traditional and the new. And that traditional is they do have relationships. Now, their relationships are probably more pragmatic and practical versus highly social. So they're engaging for information, and they're still interacting with people to do business. And I see that evolving. And I will tell you, the uptake, in my opinion, of website, we all threw up websites. And now we're all going, why aren't we doing more business on our websites?
Oh, yeah.
Well, the reality is the professional buyer has professional procurement systems. They have internal controls. They have systems. They have rules built around them. So the notion someone's just going to go buy on a website and turn right around and enter in their system, that doesn't make sense. So connectivity, I think, is going to evolve into a different type of connectivity. There's my device and my social connectivity. And I'll give you an example, David, of why I think it's a little bit more of a journey than a light switch. We had a large public company come to the company I worked for, Merrill Electric, it's now part of Rexel, and ask us. They have a professional procurement buyer, and they have field technicians. And they asked us to build them, integrate to their professional procurement system, so that when their professional buyer bought things, it automatically entered it in our system. Digitally. And for their field technicians to be able to use their device to look for things, find things, buy things, and it would enter it in their system, in our system. That's true digital connectivity. The technology works. Changing the behaviors of people doing their jobs. And they have a mix of seasoned, tenured field technicians and a mix of new, what we'll call digital natives. And I didn't see a difference in adoption amongst those demographics. Now, small data set, small sample size, one company.
Yeah.
The project was abandoned. And it was abandoned because change was too hard.
Yeah.
So change, I think, will occur over time as people really do understand I can do a job more efficiently and effectively.
Using new tools. Yeah, I think you mentioned the whole e-commerce journey, and I often call this the trail of tears for distributors. We invest millions of dollars, and we hope that people will come and use the tools. And what our Trade Hounds users tell us is that frankly that mission was kind of misguided, because what we find with the field techs is that they don't want to navigate 5 different distributors' e-commerce sites. They don't want to find different passwords. They don't want to have to understand how the search is different from one to the next. And so we're seeing the emergence of social marketplaces where there's a single navigation pathway that connects into multiple distributors. And that seems to be a pretty strong preference in terms of how the new generation wants to find materials.
Yeah, that fits right in with why I feel like the adoption of some of those tools is low. Now, my premise, they're bound by their systems. Okay, how can you create something that doesn't bound them to their system? Well, that's obviously a little more integration. There's the behavioral cultural piece. But the piece you're talking about, at least as I hear it, if you're going to be efficient, I don't have time to look for 5 different things in 5 different places.
That's right.
But the marketplace, in my opinion, still wants optionality.
Definitely.
And not everyone carries the same brands and the same lines, and there's multiple good, better, best scenarios in there. So it's one thing to say, I can get it all in one place. It's another layer of complexity to say I can do optionality and comparison across.
Which is super important because we know that there's strong preferences among brands. And
so I still see it as an information tool that at least guides them to who are the brands. And I mean, products are one thing. The service you get, the experience you get, the follow-up you get, the trust you have in the brands are valuable, and brands are a combination of people and their products and services, whatever it is you provide. And to me, the brand's ultimate value is determined by the experience those that buy from that brand get, and it builds this value equation. So a tool that helps someone find things more efficiently is going to be helpful in the whole cycle time of a process. But a lot of that will accrue back to those that still provide that experience, still provide that service, still provide that trust that I've got to have, because I'm betting my business on you to deliver what I got off your platform.
Yeah, I think that's the last mile that makes the difference in distribution. One of the things that you were alluding to earlier about social and how people connect, I think even the definition of social has changed so much. In earlier generations, connecting really meant, donut runs and showing up at job sites and, slapping backs and going out to sporting events and things like that. Today we're seeing, with this newest generation, that relationships are much more digital in nature and they're occurring in social platforms. And so when our Trade Hounds users say they want to connect with the people who they do business with, it doesn't mean doing things that old way. It means, having these social engagements and being on platforms and connecting in that way. I think that's going to be a real shift for salespeople that are trying to form relationships that way.
I think the shift has been ongoing for a while, and I think it is accelerating. I can only speak for the company that I was part of for 30 plus years. And in let's say the last 5 years, many of our sales meetings, leadership meetings, were about this topic right here. I would make the statement, and I can repeat it here, and the folks that I worked with will laugh and roll their eyes, because I would say, hey, I love you. I'm still going to go hunting and fishing with you, but I'm not going to buy from you because you're not providing the value in the experience that I need. And that encompasses a lot of the things we're talking about. Now, people still going to go hunting and fishing. And that's still part of the relationship equation. Let's don't kid ourselves. There's a social element, and that's part of the trust equation. When I get to know you as a person, it's a lot easier to trust you as my partner, because we're all going to have hard times. We're all going to have difficult things. And when I need to talk to somebody that I know is advocating for me in this difficult situation, whatever it is, supply chain issue or whatever it might be, those relationships matter and they get built over time. So I do not want to discount those. So my sense of it is these new tools that make us more efficient will cause people to maybe consolidate some of those trusting relationships. Now, that's real change. I mean, if you got 7 or 8 people that you've got relationships with, and 4 of those are providing more efficient digital tools, I probably have enough bandwidth to consolidate my relationships. I'm still going to consolidate down to people I know and I trust, but they're bringing along that additional value and they're helping me see over the horizon. They're helping me evolve my business and to run a better business.
I think, for a lot of distributors, what they need to understand is over the next 5 to 10 years, half of their buyers will change out. And, it's really those distributors who understand or anticipate these changes that you're talking about that are going to be the winners in a shakeout that will occur.
And the reality of that is that you cannot discount the demographic shifts and the digital native that's coming along, and they will be our buyers. But it's also a truism that those that are selling and interacting with them in the distributor or the manufacturer are going through the same change. Those buses are sort of moving at the same rates at the same
turnover
time.
rates,
and what I'm finding is distributors that listen to their people, and many of them do. You can't say all of them do because all's a bad word, and you can't say none of them do because none's a bad word. There's absolutes. There's
a bell curve.
A bell curve, and I'd say the vast majority listen to their people. And when you talk to their people, they're telling us their peers are going to buy different, no different than those that are buying in their companies are saying, I don't want to buy that way.
Yeah.
So it's evolving, and I think that is probably picking up speed.
I think the one thing that's making it challenging for distributors is that while their sellers are turning over along with their buyers, in this case, the technology aspect of it, that distributors need to really invest in the integrations in these types of platforms. All the social connections in the world amount to nothing if you haven't integrated your catalog into the platforms where people are buying.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. That's part of that efficiency equation. What a seller would do because they're granted a certain portion of time was through brute force find what the customer needed. And the customer didn't have another option but to wait on the brute force. Now, I expect it quickly. And I expect ultimately back to that optionality at speed. So if you're at a disadvantage as a competitor in a space to those that have that availability at scale and speed and optionality, it's going to be hard for you.
Well, I think that's really a good summary of what's going on. We have a people shift that's going on, and then we have a technical shift. And it's really the distributors who can find the commitment really to bring those two together that I think will be the leaders going forward.
And we talk about the web, and it's underperformed. If I as a leader went back 10 years and had the future knowledge of it would work, of course I would do something different. But in the absence of that knowledge, would I have done anything different? No, you have to try, you have to experiment, you've got to fail, you learn from it, you iterate. That's just how it goes. And those that can do that and get more comfortable with that in a shorter time frame, they're going to be the leaders.
And not give up.
Yeah, and not give up.
Yeah. Well, Wes, it's been great hearing about how distributors are adapting, and we really appreciate all the great work that NAED does and all the good value that your members bring on the daily basis.
I appreciate being invited, and I'll pay you a compliment. I've always considered you one of those thought leaders,
Thank
kind
you.
of leading some of us to think about different things in different ways.
Well, thank you. That's very kind.
Yeah.
Great to spend time with you.
Good. So you,
Thank you.